Before we begin, make sure you subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments what you would have done. Because by the end of this story, you won't trust a single phone call ever again. The 911. Recording starts with heavy breathing. "It's my daughter," the woman says, her voice trembling so violently the dispatcher can barely understand her. "They have my daughter. They're going to kill her." In the background, another line clicks. A man's voice breaks through, calm, controlled, clinical. "If you hang up," he says, "you'll never see her again." It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon in Phoenix, Arizona, in early 2023. Jennifer DeStefano had been running errands when her phone rang. The number wasn't saved, but it had her area code. She almost ignored it. Then she heard the screaming. Mom, help me?" Jennifer would later tell investigators she knew that voice better than her own. It was her 15-year-old daughter, Brianna. The panic in her scream was raw, desperate, primal. "They have me?" the voice cried. "Mom, please, they're going to hurt me." Jennifer's knees nearly buckled. She stepped away from her car, her heart slamming against her ribs, so hard it felt like it might fracture bone. Then the screaming stopped. A man picked up the line. "I have your daughter," he said. "No shouting, no chaos, just business. You will withdraw $50,000. Cash. If you contact police, she dies." Jennifer's mind fractured between instinct and disbelief. Brianna had left earlier that morning on a ski trip with friends in another state. She was supposed to be safe, surrounded by adults. "Put her back on," Jennifer demanded. The voice returned, sobbing, gasping. "Mom, please. He's hurting me." Jennifer would later say the detail that convinced her wasn't just a tone. It was the way the girl said, "Mom." The exact rhythm. The same vocal crack she'd heard since Brianna was 5 years old. She believed it completely. Within minutes, she was speeding toward her bank. Her hands shook so violently she could barely grip the steering wheel. Every red light felt like torture. Every second felt fatal. Meanwhile, Brianna was 700 miles away, alive, unharmed, laughing with friends. The call lasted nearly 20 minutes. The man instructed Jennifer not to hang up, not to alert anyone. He described Brianna's appearance in detail. Her height, her hair color, even the small scar above her eyebrow from a childhood fall. Information scraped from social media. At the bank parking lot, something shifted. Jennifer noticed another mother standing nearby, watching her pace in circles, crying into her phone. "What's wrong?" the woman mouthed. Jennifer hesitated. The man on the phone warned her again. "If you tell anyone, I'll shoot her." But desperation overpowered fear. Jennifer whispered, "They have my daughter." The stranger didn't panic. Instead, she pulled out her own phone and began searching Brianna's Instagram profile. Within seconds, she found a recent story. A smiling selfie, posted minutes ago, tagged in Colorado. Jennifer's world froze. The kidnapper was still talking. "You have 10 minutes. But Brianna was online, alive, safe. Jennifer hung up. The silence afterward felt unnatural, like the aftermath of an explosion. Police later traced the call to an international VoIP number routed through multiple servers. Nearly impossible to pin down in real time. By the time detectives became involved, the trail had already dissolved into digital smoke. What investigators uncovered next was more disturbing than a traditional kidnapping. There had been no abduction, no surveillance van, no physical threat. Instead, detectives discovered that Brianna's voice had been replicated using publicly available video clips from TikTok and Instagram. Short snippets, birthday messages, school dances, casual conversations, fed into an AI voice cloning program. In less than 24 hours, criminals had created a perfect digital copy of her voice. And Jennifer wasn't alone. Across the United States and parts of Europe, similar reports had surfaced. Parents receiving calls from kidnapped children. Grandparents hearing grandsons begging for bail money. The voices weren't distorted or robotic. They were flawless. The FBI would later warn that these scams were escalating rapidly, targeting families with heavy social media footprints. Detective Aaron Mitchell of the Phoenix Police Department described the case as psychological warfare. "They don't need to take your child," he told reporters. "They just need you to believe they did." Jennifer replayed the recording for investigators days later. In a sterile conference room under fluorescent lighting, she listened to the voice again. It was Brianna. Every inflection, every breath. But it wasn't. The audio forensics team analyzed the waveform patterns. They found microscopic irregularities, compression artifacts, unnatural pacing, digital stitching too precise for a human throat, synthetic, manufactured, and terrifyingly convincing. The investigation quickly expanded. Detectives discovered that the scammers had studied Brianna's social media for weeks. They knew her friends' names, her school mascot, the ski trip location. They even knew Jennifer's routine when she typically ran errands alone. This wasn't random. It was targeted. As law enforcement dug deeper into the IP routing data, one analyst flagged something unusual. The same digital fingerprint linked to Jennifer's call had been used in 3 other extortion attempts that month, one in Texas, one in Ontario, and one in the UK. But here's what made detectives uneasy. In 2 of those cases, the victims had actually transferred money before discovering the truth. And in one case, the family never reported the call at all, because they were still too afraid to admit what they'd heard. But when investigators pulled the back-end server logs from a compromised hosting provider overseas, they found something that changed the direction of the entire case. The voice file labeled Brianna_final_v3.wave. It wasn't the only one. There were hundreds, organized, cataloged, labeled by name. And one of them belonged to someone much closer to Jennifer than anyone expected. The name on the file made Detective Aaron Mitchell lean back in his chair. It wasn't Brianna. It was Jennifer. Jennifer_Stefano_master, a wave. The room fell quiet except for the low hum of computer servers. Investigators had expected dozens of victims, maybe hundreds. But seeing Jennifer's own name in that database shifted the case from financial scam to something far more personal. They opened the file. Jennifer's voice filled the lab speakers, crying, begging, saying, "Please don't hurt me. I'll do whatever you want." Jennifer covered her mouth. "That's not real," she whispered. "I never said that." But she had, just not in that context. The forensic team quickly identified the source material: public Facebook videos, a charity live stream, a podcast appearance from 2 years earlier, where Jennifer spoke about parenting teens in the digital age. Hours of audio freely available online. The criminals hadn't just cloned her daughter's voice. They had built an entire digital family. And that meant something chilling. The next call might not target Jennifer. It could target Brianna. Investigators escalated the case to federal authorities within 24 hours. The pattern across states and across borders suggested an organized network operating overseas, using AI voice replication tools paired with detailed social engineering. But this wasn't random data scraping. Whoever ran this operation knew which families would panic fastest. They knew which parents had the financial capacity to pay. They knew who posted frequently, who shared birthdays, travel plans, school names. The digital breadcrumbs weren't hidden. They were volunteered. Meanwhile, in Phoenix, Jennifer's story exploded across local news. Within days, national outlets picked it up. Morning shows replayed portions of the 911 call. Headlines warned, AI kidnapping scams on the rise. And that media exposure triggered something unexpected. Another mother came forward. Then another. In Texas, a father admitted he had wired $30,000 before learning his daughter was safe in her college dorm. In Ontario, a grandmother withdrew her retirement savings after hearing what she swore was her grandson sobbing to the phone. The criminals weren't improvising. They were refining. Forensic analysts traced the server infrastructure to a cluster of shell companies tied to a tech outsourcing firm operating in Eastern Europe. The hosting service had been compromised or knowingly rented by individuals masking their identities behind layers of encrypted routing. Every time investigators moved closer, the servers went dark, files deleted, logs wiped. But one mistake changed everything. During a routine metadata sweep, a cyber analyst discovered that one of the voice files, not Jennifer's, not Brianna's, had been explored with a default username still embedded in the encoding signature. A single oversight, a human error. The username led to a freelance AI developer profile on a public coding forum. The account had posted tutorials about voice synthesis tools months earlier. The profile claimed to be based in Latvia, but IP history told a different story, routing back repeatedly to a co-working office in Bucharest, Romania. Within weeks, European authorities coordinated with U.S. federal agents. Surveillance began quietly. Financial trails were mapped. Cryptocurrency wallets linked to ransom payments were monitored. The network wasn't small. It was a call center. Rows of operators using cloned voices to extort families in real time. Scripts displayed on screens. Psychological tactics rehearsed and optimized. They weren't monsters hiding in basements. They were professionals treating terror like a business model. The takedown happened at dawn. Romanian authorities entered the office suite, expecting a handful of suspects. Instead, they found nearly 20 individuals, headsets still on desks, laptops open, software dashboards displaying waveform generators labeled with names from across the United States and Europe, hundreds of active projects, thousands of archived voice prints, and pinned to a digital task board, a chilling note: Phase 2 reverse targeting. Investigators later explained what that meant. The next evolution wasn't just pretending a child had been kidnapped. It was using cloned parental voices to call teenagers directly. Mom says get in the car. Dad told him to pick you up. The plan was to exploit trust at its deepest level. Had Jennifer not gone public, had she withdrawn that money quietly and stayed silent out of embarrassment, the operation might have continued scaling unnoticed. But the story didn't end with arrests. Months later, during the prosecution phase, prosecutors played Jennifer's 911 call in court. Jurors listened to the cloned voice. Many wiped away tears. One juror later admitted, "If I got that call, I would have paid too." The ringleader, a former audio engineer who had pivoted into AI voice modeling, defended himself by claiming, "We never physically harmed anyone." But the psychological damage told a different story. Victims reported insomnia, panic attacks, persistent fear when phones rang late at night. Trust, once fractured, doesn't reset easily. Jennifer now keeps her social media private. Brianna deleted years of public videos. The family installed call authentication protocols and shared secret code words, something investigators now recommend nationwide. Yet even after convictions were secured and sentences handed down, one fact lingers. The software they used is still publicly available. The technology isn't illegal. And every day, millions of new voice samples are uploaded voluntarily to the internet. 6 months after the arrests, Jennifer received another unknown call. Her heart stopped for a split second before she answered. Silence. Then a recorded telemarketing message. She laughed it off later. But she admitted something investigators understand all too well. She still listens carefully. Every time her daughter says, "Mom." Because once you've heard your child's voice used as a weapon, you never fully trust again. And the next time your phone rings with a familiar voice on the other end, you might hesitate too. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one.